In a crowded gravel market, the new Cervélo Áspero-5 stands out, way out. The brand has gone all in on aerodynamics, not just the frame set and the handlebars, but even the seat post, the wheels, and the tires. Yes, the tires. 42mm slicks, these Vittoria Corsa controls. As the guy who wrote Aero is Everything, there's a lot I appreciate about this bike, but context and nuance are everything here. For instance, Cervélo claims this bike is a whopping 37 watts faster than the outgoing bike and 34 watts faster than any other gravel bike on the marketplace. That's a huge number. The context, however, is key. That 37 watts comes from a calculation they do by measuring this bike against the others in a wind tunnel at 30 miles an hour. When you're riding at real world speeds, more like 20 miles an hour, that number gets a lot smaller. There's a lot I love about this bike, including how it looks and how it feels, even how these tires feel about 98% of the time. There are some things that make me grit my teeth though. Having gone all in on Aero means compromising in other areas. Just the livability, like being able to put a saddlebag on is difficult with this deep post. Being able to get stuff in and out of the tight storage compartment is even more of a wrestling match. And although Cervélo is far from alone from this, the pricing of these things is frustrating. The frame set, for instance, $5,500 is nearly 3 times what my daughter paid for a vehicle. In addition to the Aero, Cervélo is all in on some trends, such as short cranks. This is a 170 on a 56 bike. Narrow bars. This is a 40 on a 56. And there's some other bold moves, like with the gearing. I appreciate the fact that they've gone with a 48 ring on all the bikes when paired with the 1052 mullet at the back. That gives you a nice low gear and a gear you can stay on top of even on gradual descents on pavement. Yes, you're compromising some of the smaller jumps you would get with the Explorer group set or something with a tighter spacing. But for all-around riding on dirt and pavement, up and down the mountains and on the flats, which is what I love to do here in Boulder, Colorado, this bike is pretty delicious to ride. Now let's dig into more of the specifics, including Cervélo's claims on the aerodynamics of the bike and the tires. Cervélo called my favorite tires slow. Let's talk data. Why test at 30 miles an hour? Cervélo says this is because that's how they test for road, and they like to have comparative data. Fair. But for gravel, 30 miles an hour, really? For me, if I'm doing 30 miles an hour, the limiter is the size of my courage, to not put it too rudely, not the size of my CDA. So I push them for what the wattage splits would be at 20 miles an hour, a more realistic speed. Cervélo was kind enough to do some calculations. So these are not wind tunnel measurements, but these are calculations in 2 categories. The product spec, as listed here, is how the bikes are sold. Then, being engineers, they want to standardize as many things as possible. So the engineering spec is using the same parts and wheels and tires. So you're just looking at frame set and cockpit differences here. So still at 20 miles an hour, a realistic speed for the rest of us riding gravel, the differences are not insubstantial. Frame post, handlebars, the construction, and how they feel. Cervélo clearly went all in on the aerodynamics of the bike, not just the frame set, but the tires, as we've discussed, and the wheels, and the cockpit. However, I appreciate the fact that they kept the cockpit as a 2-piece, so you can, as a rider, make some adjustments. Simple things like the angle of the bar, or if you need to, you can swap out the stem length or the bar width. With the internal routing, that will still take some doing, but it's a doable thing. And notably, you can take the pieces off for travel. So for instance, I took this bike to Minnesota to film the USA Cycling Gravel Nationals Championship course and was able to get it inside my Pro frame bag. You can also bolt Aero bars onto the bar, should you like. I appreciate the sweep on the bar. It's 12-degree flare, which seems to be where a lot of brands have settled out. Initially we had crazy flare. It was basically like a curved flat bar, mountain bike bar, what we were seeing from some brands, and it's been brought in a bit. For bar width, size 48 gets a 36 bar. Size 51 frames a 38, size 54 and 56 get this 40mm bar. That's center to center on the tops, and then it flares out below. And then sizes 58 and 61 get a 42 bar. Cranks are on that short trend. 170s here on this 56, also 54 centimeter bikes, down to 165s on the two small sizes, and the two biggest sizes get 172.5. Speaking of trends, on tires, Cervélo is erring on the conservative side. You've got 45 max with 6 mil of clearance on either side. So yes, you could squeeze a 50 in here. Don't do so in deep muddy days. You can go up to a 52 tooth ring with a wide chain line. So why slicks? All about that wind tunnel data. Cervélo tested a number of tires and found that, lo and behold, slicks are the fastest aerodynamically. They were surprised, product manager Carly Gauger said, at how well, relatively, some knobby tires did, as long as they were a full knobby tire with a relatively rounded profile. Tires that did the worst were my favorite type of tire, the tires with a semi-slick center and then some shoulder knob, because those have a squared off profile, and squares, as you probably know, are not a fast aerodynamic shape. Now the builds and prices. Here's a beef I have, and Cervélo is certainly not alone in asking a pretty penny for its machines, but there's steep prices here. The red build, $12,500. GRX Di2, the new 1x wireless, $8,700. The Force bike, similarly, $8,700 US. The frame set alone, frame, fork, cockpit, seat post, $5,500. That ain't cheap, folks. Group configuration, bold stuff. I dig it. 48 tooth rings across the board on all the spec, going with the mullet in the back. 1052 SRAM, 1051 Shimano. Thinking here was race gearing. 4810 is a relatively big gear for gravel, and a 4851 for Shimano and 4852 for SRAM still gives you a nice low gear for grunting up a steep climb. I appreciated this gearing for riding both gravel and pavement, and that I felt like I had enough rope on both ends. Yes, you do have some bigger jumps in the lower end, but often when I ride gravel bikes on pavement, which is a good portion of the time, because just getting from my house to the gravel, I'm on pavement, I can be spun out. I was never spun out with this particular setup, so I like the feel of this. Cervélo also has its own chain guide, which looks pretty slick. So how do these tires feel? Most of the time, they feel really good. They feel great on pavement. I'm a big fan of the Vittoria Corsa tires across the board for road. For instance, I was out at Sea Otter riding the Bridge Surveyor that had 32 courses on there, and it just felt buttery and delicious. Just so smooth and supple and fast and grippy. Love how these tires feel on the pavement. This 42 version, which you can only get on this bike, is arguably a giant road tire. Not, in fact, a gravel tire. But turns out you can ride slick tires on the gravel. And on dirt, it also felt good and supple. Where it did not feel so great, as you might imagine just by eyeballing it, is in loose corners. There is very little grip. Proponents of a full slick would tell you it's not about the knob or the tread pattern, it's just about the footprint. And a wide tire at low pressure can have grip on the ground. And while that may be true, I did not find these to be the bitiest. Similarly, standing up on steeps, I had to pay attention to keeping my weight balanced for fear of sliding out the rear. But on the whole, I really enjoyed how these tires felt. Just had to take it a little extra cautiously through the loose corners. So is this a bike for underbiking, for chunky gravel riding, for bike packing? No, but Cervélo has not designed it as such. They've gone all in on the Aero. So if you're looking for a bike for racing or just for the racing feel, I appreciate how Cervélo has teed this up. Another trend, zero setback post, so you've got the thing slam forward. A downside to this post with an Aero design is that it makes getting a saddlebag off and on fussier than a more traditional post. Speaking of fussy, the internal storage is the narrowest opening I have tried across a wide variety of gravel bikes. There are two little bags that when using a very thin TPU tube, you can get in and out, but not without some doing. So internal storage, it's a mixed bag. It's better to have, I think, than nothing, but this is certainly the most difficult of the storage designs I've tried out there. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed these tires on dirt. They're not confidence-inspiring in loose corners, but I could see taking this bike to gravel worlds in Nebraska, for instance. The geometry works well for all gravel racing, I think. 45 mil of clearance is limited, but not outlandishly little. Other Aero race bikes have the same, if not even less. Looking at you, Canyon Grail. Now, the Áspero-5 is unapologetically an Aero gravel race bike. That said, aside from the storage and the tires, which you can change out, it's not really compromised for normal riding. The 40-44 rims aren't crazy deep. The bars I find to be comfortable, and the post isn't outrageously stiff. I'm surprised they didn't do bags. Apodura's new bags, for instance, the claim of 5-watt savings by smoothing out the airflow, effectively making a massively deep head tube. Another user-friendly design is the headset cap. You've got two options. You've got a 7 mil or a 22 mil top cap. And then there's the two-piece spacers where you can adjust the height of your stem without having to completely redo the brake routing. Some bold choices, some bold choices here on the Cervélo Áspero-5. In all, I really love how this thing feels. I hate the pricing and I hate some of the compromises. But I appreciate the fact that Cervélo is not just going the same route as many others and having a vanilla bike, but just going all in on certain things. Whether that's a good thing for you or not, you can decide. I'm just here to give you the details and my opinions. Let me know what questions you have in the comments below. I will do my best to answer. And whether you like your bike aerodynamic or fully upright like a block in the wind, just get out there and enjoy the ride.